The lawyer's voice droned on about codicils and clauses, but Helena Vance couldn't focus on anything except the absurdity of sitting in this mahogany-paneled office next to a man she'd never met, learning that a dead woman had just chained them together for an entire year. She twisted the strap of her purse between her fingers, stealing a glance at the stranger beside her. He sat perfectly still in his charcoal suit, jaw tight, staring at the attorney like he could incinerate the words coming out of his mouth through sheer willpower alone. Everything about him screamed money and control, from his platinum watch to the way he held himself like he owned every room he entered. Which Helena suspected he probably did. To summarize, the attorney said, peering over his glasses, Mrs. Eleanor Kensington's will stipulates that her grandson, Fletcher Kensington, will inherit the family estate and controlling interest in Kensington Industries only if he resides at Willowbrook Manor for 1 full year. Additionally, Miss Helena Vance, as the primary beneficiary of Mrs. Kensington's personal effects and trust fund, must also reside at the property for the same duration. Should either party fail to meet these conditions, the entire estate will be liquidated and donated to charity. Helena's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, what?" Fletcher spoke for the first time, his voice low and dangerous. "This is insane. My grandmother was in her right mind when she wrote this. Completely sound, Mr. Kensington. I advised against such unusual terms, but Eleanor was quite insistent. She believed this arrangement would benefit you both." The attorney shuffled his papers. "The year begins immediately. You have 48 hours to take up residence." Helena's mind raced. She'd met Eleanor Kensington exactly 3 times. The elderly woman had been a regular at the botanical garden where Helena worked as a horticulturist, and they'd bonded over a shared love of heritage roses. Eleanor had been kind, funny, surprisingly sharp for her 86 years. But this, living with her grandson for a year, it made no sense. "I have a life," Helena said. "I have an apartment, a job." Mrs. Kensington arranged for a leave of absence from the botanical gardens with full salary continuation, the attorney replied. "She was quite thorough." Fletcher stood abruptly, the movement sharp enough to make Helena flinch. "Give us a moment." It wasn't a request. He walked out of the office without looking back. Helena sat frozen for a heartbeat before scrambling after him. She found him in the building's lobby, one hand braced against the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. "Look," she said, "I don't understand this any more than you do. Your grandmother and I were friendly, but I never expected anything from her. Certainly not this." He turned to face her, and she got her first real look at him. Late 20s, maybe 30 at most. Dark hair pushed back from a face that was all sharp angles and intensity. Gray eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in 3 seconds flat. He was handsome in that distant, untouchable way of men who'd never heard the word no. "How much do you want?" he asked. Helena blinked. "Excuse me," to walk away. "Name your price. I'll write you a check right now." Heat flooded her cheeks. "You think I'm running some kind of con? I think my grandmother had a soft spot for strays and you happened to be in the right place at the right time, so how much?" The dismissiveness in his tone ignited something sharp in her chest. "I don't want your money, Mr. Kensington. Actually, you know what? I don't want any of this. Tell the lawyer I'm out." She turned on her heel and made it 3 steps before his voice stopped her. "Wait." She didn't turn around. "Why? So you can insult me some more." A long pause. Then, "If you walk away, I lose everything my family built over 4 generations. The company, the property, all of it. Gone." Helena looked back over her shoulder. Something had shifted in his expression, a crack in that impenetrable facade, not quite vulnerability but close enough to make her hesitate. "My grandmother had her reasons for everything she did," he continued. I might not understand them, but I respected her. This was her final wish. And you think what? We just move into some mansion together like roommates. For an entire year. Willowbrook Manor has 15 bedrooms. I think we can manage to stay out of each other's way. He stepped closer, hands in his pockets. I'm not asking you to like me. I'm asking you to honor an old woman's last request. And in return, you'll be financially secure for the rest of your life. Helena studied him. There was something wounded beneath all that polish, a rawness he was working hard to conceal. She thought about Eleanor, the way the old woman's eyes had sparkled when she talked about her garden, about beauty and growth and second chances. I loved your grandmother, Helena said quietly. She was kind to me when I needed it, so I'll do this. Not for the money, for her. Fletcher's shoulders dropped an inch, tension releasing. Thank you. But let's get something straight right now. I'm not a stray. I'm not a charity case. I worked my way through college, I have a doctorate in botanical sciences, and I've published research in 3 academic journals. Your grandmother and I were friends. Real friends. Whatever she was trying to accomplish with this arrangement, I'm going to trust that she had good reasons. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. Noted Dr. Vance. 2 days later, Helena stood in the circular driveway of Willowbrook Manor with 3 suitcases and a growing sense of unreality. The house was gorgeous, a sprawling estate that managed to be grand without being ostentatious. Ivy climbed the stone walls, and she could see the edges of an extensive garden wrapping around the property. Fletcher emerged from the front door as her taxi pulled away. He traded the suit for dark jeans and a white button-down, looking somehow more intimidating in casual clothes. I'll show you to your room, he said, grabbing 2 of her suitcases before she could protest. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior, all soaring ceilings and original hardwood and art that probably cost more than Helena's car. But it also felt lived in, comfortable. There were photographs on the walls, books stacked on tables, a throw blanket draped over a leather couch. Your grandmother had excellent taste, Helena said. She designed every room herself. Fletcher led her up a curved staircase. Spent 40 years getting this place exactly the way she wanted it. He showed her to a bedroom in the east wing, spacious and bright with windows overlooking the garden. Someone had already placed fresh flowers on the dresser. Bathrooms through there. There's an office down the hall if you need workspace. Mrs. Chen comes 3 times a week to cook and clean, but otherwise we'll mostly be on our own. Where's your room? The question came out before Helena could stop it. West wing. He set her suitcases down. Opposite side of the house. Like I said, plenty of space. An awkward silence settled between them. Fletcher shifted his weight, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I have to go into the city for work most days, he said, but I'll be back by evening. My grandmother's will requires that we both sleep here every night, and there are random checks by the estate executor. Random checks? You're kidding. I wish I was. Apparently she wanted to make sure we actually went through with this. He moved toward the door, then paused. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself to anything. I'll try to stay out of your way. He was gone before Helena could respond, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. She sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by expensive furniture in a house that cost more than she'd earn in 5 lifetimes, and wondered what on earth Fletcher Kensington had been thinking. The first week passed in a strange dance of avoidance. Fletcher left early and came home late, usually heading straight to his room with barely a word. Helena explored the grounds, reveling in the incredible garden that Eleanor had cultivated. She found heritage roses that were nearly extinct, rare orchids. A greenhouse with a collection that would make any botanical institution jealous. She fell into a routine of working in the garden during the day, cataloging and caring for the plants, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of green growing things. In the evenings, she'd make dinner in the massive kitchen, half hoping Fletcher would join her and half relieved when he didn't. On Friday evening, she was making pasta when he appeared in the doorway, tie loosened, exhaustion etched into his features. "That smells incredible," he said. Helena looked up from the stove, surprised. "Thanks. There's plenty if you want some." He hesitated, and she could see the internal debate playing out. Then he shrugged off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. "Let me help." They moved around each other carefully at first, Fletcher setting the table while Helena finished the sauce. But gradually, something shifted. He asked about her day, actually listening when she talked about the garden. She asked about his work, learning that he ran the architectural division of Kensington Industries, designing sustainable commercial buildings. "My grandmother hated what I did," Fletcher said, twirling pasta on his fork. "Thought I was wasting my life pushing paper around boardrooms." "Were you?" His eyes snapped to hers, startled by the directness of the question. Then, slowly, he shook his head. "No, but I think she believed I'd forgotten how to live, how to be human instead of just a businessman." "Is she right?" Fletcher was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe." Something cracked open between them in that admission. Helena saw past the armor to the man underneath, someone who worked too hard and felt too much and didn't know how to stop long enough to breathe. "Your grandmother's garden is extraordinary," she said softly. "She told me once that she could only think clearly when her hands were in the soil, that everything else was just noise, but plants were real. She said something similar to me once. I was 12. Angry about something I can't even remember now. She took me out to the rose garden and handed me pruning shears, made me work until my hands ached. When we were done, she told me that growth requires both nurturing and cutting away dead things. That you can't have one without the other." Helena smiled. "That sounds like her." They talked until the food was gone and the wine bottle was empty, trading stories about Eleanor, slowly building a fragile bridge between them. When Fletcher finally stood to clear the dishes, Helena found herself disappointed that the evening was ending. "We should do this again," he said, and it sounded almost like a question. "I'd like that." The next Saturday, Helena woke to find Fletcher already in the garden, staring at the rose bushes with a puzzled expression. She watched him from the kitchen window, amused. "Looking for something," she called out. He turned, a rare, genuine smile crossing his face. "I thought I'd try gardening, but I have no idea where to start. Want some help?" They spent the morning working side by side, Helena teaching him about soil pH and pruning techniques while Fletcher asked endless questions. He was a quick study, she realized, with good instincts. And he looked different out here, less severe, with dirt on his hands and sunlight in his hair. "Why did you become a horticulturist?" he asked, kneeling beside a bed of lavender. "My mom died when I was 16, Helena said. "Cancer. Afterward, I couldn't sleep. I'd go out to our backyard in the middle of the night and just sit with her plants. She'd loved gardening. Being there, taking care of what she'd created, it was the only thing that made me feel connected to her." Fletcher's hand stilled. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. But it taught me that life keeps growing, even in grief, that there's always another season coming." "Is that why you and my grandmother connected? You both understood loss?" Helena considered that. "Maybe, but I think we also both believed in possibility. In taking something broken and helping it bloom again." Fletcher looked at her then, really looked, and Helena felt her breath catch. There was something in his expression, a warmth that hadn't been there before. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. "Me too." As spring deepened into early summer, their careful distance dissolved. Fletcher started coming home earlier, and they fell into a pattern of cooking dinner together, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about the pressure of running a multi-billion-dollar company, about feeling like he could never measure up to his father's legacy. She told him about the loneliness of academia, of being too focused on her research to build real relationships. "I haven't been on a date in 2 years," she admitted one evening, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine while Fletcher sat in the armchair across from her. 2 years? That's impossible." "Why impossible?" He looked away, color rising in his cheeks. "Because you're brilliant and beautiful, and any man would be lucky to spend time with you." Helena's heart stuttered. "Fletcher, sorry, that was inappropriate. We're living together because of a legal obligation, not because we're—" He trailed off, not finishing the sentence. "Not because we're what?" The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Fletcher stood abruptly. "I should go to bed. Early meeting tomorrow." He was gone before Helena could process what had just happened, leaving her alone with racing thoughts and a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the wine. Something was shifting between them, undeniable and terrifying. She'd catch him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression unguarded and hungry. And she knew he caught her doing the same, her eyes following him across rooms, memorizing the way he moved, the rare sound of his laugh. They were playing with fire, and they both knew it. One evening in late June, Helena was in the greenhouse when Fletcher found her. She was repotting orchids, focused and content, dirt smudged across her cheek. "Hey," he said from the doorway, "I have something for you." She looked up, surprised. He held a wrapped package, looking almost nervous. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a leather-bound journal, the pages thick and cream-colored. On the first page, in elegant script, it read, "The Gardens of Willowbrook Manor by Dr. Helena Vance." "I thought you could document the plants here," Fletcher said. "Everything my grandmother grew, all your work preserving it." "So it's not lost." Helena's throat tightened. "This is incredibly thoughtful. She loved this garden, and I think she'd be happy knowing you're the one protecting it." He stepped closer, and Helena's pulse kicked up. "You've brought this place back to life." "Brought me back to life, if I'm being honest. Fletcher, I know this is complicated. I know we're here because of a legal requirement and there's an expiration date on this whole situation. But Helena, somewhere over the past few months, you became the best part of my day. Every morning I wake up wondering what you'll say, what you'll show me in the garden, whether you'll laugh at my terrible jokes at dinner." Her hands were shaking. "I feel the same way." "You do?" Instead of answering, Helena closed the distance between them and kissed him. His surprise lasted half a second before he responded, one hand coming up to cup her face while the other wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus and intensity, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Fletcher rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he said, "so have I. This changes things. I know." He pulled back just far enough to look at her, his expression serious. "I need you to understand something. This isn't just attraction for me. I'm falling for you, Helena. Actually falling. And I know that's probably the worst possible thing given our situation, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way." Joy and terror warred in her chest. "The year ends in December. Then what?" "Then I'm going to do everything in my power to convince you to stay. Not because of my grandmother's will, not because of any obligation, but because I can't imagine this house, my life, without you in it." Helena kissed him again, softer this time, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally left the greenhouse, walking hand in hand back to the house, she felt like the world had tilted on its axis. They took things slowly, aware of the strange circumstances binding them together. But slowly still meant stolen kisses in the kitchen, Fletcher's arms around her while they watched movies, falling asleep on the couch tangled together. It meant learning each other's rhythms, quirks, the small intimacies that built something real. Fletcher was different when he let his guard down. Funny, surprisingly romantic, with a dry wit that caught her off guard. He left notes in the book she was reading, brought home her favorite flowers, learned to make the Thai food she loved. And in return, Helena watched him relax, saw the tension drain from his shoulders, heard him laugh more in a week than he probably had in the past year. One Saturday morning in July, they were making breakfast together when Fletcher's phone rang. His expression darkened as he looked at the screen. "I need to take this," he said, stepping out onto the terrace. Helena tried not to eavesdrop, but she couldn't help catching fragments. "I told you I'm not interested. Because she's using you, Christopher, and you're too blind to see it. Fine, make your own mistakes." He came back in looking troubled. "Everything okay?" Helena asked. Fletcher ran a hand through his hair. "My cousin. He's engaged to a woman I don't trust, but he won't listen to me." "Why don't you trust her?" "Because she's after his money. I've seen it 100 times. People who latch onto anyone with the Kensington name thinking they've hit the jackpot." Something cold settled in Helena's stomach. "Is that what you thought about me when we first met?" "What? No, Helena, that's not what I meant. But you did think it. When your grandmother's lawyer read the will, the first thing you did was offer me money to walk away. You assumed I was some kind of gold digger." Fletcher's jaw tightened. "That was different. I didn't know you then." "And now you do. Fletcher, we've known each other for 4 months. 4 months of living in this bubble, cut off from the real world. What happens when the year is up? When you go back to your life and I go back to mine? That's not how this ends." "How do you know?" Her voice cracked. "How do you know that this is real and not just proximity and convenience?" Fletcher crossed to her, taking her face in his hands. "Because I've never felt like this about anyone. Because you challenge me and surprise me and make me want to be better. Because when I think about my future, you're in every single version of it." Helena wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. But fear clawed at her throat, whispering that this was too good, too fast, too much. "I need some air," she said, pulling away. She spent the afternoon in the garden, hands in the soil, trying to quiet the panic in her chest. Fletcher found her as the sun was setting, sitting on the ground beside the roses. "I'm sorry," he said, "for making you doubt this, for making you doubt us." "I'm scared," Helena admitted. "Everything about this situation is bizarre. We're together because your grandmother forced us into proximity. How do I know what's real?" Fletcher sat beside her, not touching, just present. "My grandmother was many things, but she wasn't a fool. I think she knew exactly what she was doing." "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking about it. About why she structured the will the way she did, and I think she was trying to give me something I'd never let myself have otherwise." "What's that?" "Time, space, a reason to stop running long enough to actually live." He turned to look at her. "I was drowning, Helena. Working 80-hour weeks, measuring my worth by profit margins and stock prices. I wasn't living. I was just existing. And then she forced me here, forced me to slow down, and I found you." Helena's throat ached. "She told me once that I needed to let people in. That I'd buried myself in work and isolation after losing my mother, and that life was passing me by. I thought she was just being a concerned old woman, but maybe she saw something I couldn't. She loved us both, and I think she hoped we'd find our way to each other. That's quite a gamble." Fletcher smiled. "She always did like long odds." He reached out, taking Helena's dirt-stained hand. "I can't promise this will be easy. I can't promise I won't mess up or say the wrong thing, but I can promise that what I feel for you is real." that it has nothing to do with wills or obligations or convenience. You're it for me, Helena Vance, the one I want to come home to build a life with. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're it for me too. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And Helena let herself believe, let herself hope that maybe Eleanor Kensington's final gift was exactly what they both needed. Summer melted into fall, and they settled into something that felt startlingly like forever. Fletcher introduced her to his friends, his colleagues, making it clear that she was important to him. Helena brought him to the botanical garden, showing him her work, the research she'd abandoned when Eleanor's will had upended her life. You miss it, Fletcher observed, watching her examine a rare species of fern. Sometimes, but the work I'm doing at Willowbrook feels important too. Your grandmother collected plants that are vanishing from the world, preserving them, documenting them, it matters. What if you could do both? Keep working with the garden, but also come back here, publish your findings. Helena looked at him, surprised. The botanical garden wouldn't go for that. They might, with the right incentive. What if Kensington Industries funded a new research wing dedicated to plant preservation and botanical science? You could lead it. Fletcher, that's crazy. Why? We invest in sustainable architecture. Conservation is a natural extension of that mission, and you're one of the best in your field. It makes perfect sense. Helena's heart swelled. You'd really do that? I'd do anything for you. Haven't you figured that out yet? In October, Fletcher took her to a charity gala in the city. Helena felt out of place among the designer gowns and diamonds, but Fletcher stayed close, his hand warm on the small of her back. You're nervous, he murmured. These aren't my people. They're not really mine either anymore. Not since I met you and remembered there's more to life than cocktail parties and networking. A woman approached, elegant and cold-eyed. Fletcher, darling, it's been ages. Vanessa. Fletcher's voice was carefully neutral. This is Helena Vance. Helena Vanessa Ashford. Vanessa's gaze raked over Helena, assessing and dismissing her in seconds. Vance, I don't know that family. Because I earned my doctorate instead of inheriting my position, Helena said sweetly. Fletcher coughed to cover a laugh. Vanessa's smile turned sharp. How fascinating. And how did you two meet? Through my grandmother, Fletcher said firmly. If you'll excuse us, we were just heading out. He steered Helena toward the exit, and once they were safely in the car, he burst out laughing. Did you see her face? God, that was perfect. Was she an ex? Briefly. A long time ago. She's exactly the kind of person I used to date. Beautiful, connected, completely soulless. And now? Fletcher reached over, threading his fingers through hers. Now I know the difference between someone who looks good on paper and someone who makes me want to be better. You make me better, Helena. You make me braver, she said softly. As November arrived, bringing cold winds and bare trees, Helena couldn't shake a growing unease. The year was almost up. In 6 weeks, the terms of Eleanor's will would be fulfilled, and they'd be free to go their separate ways. Free to stay together too, of course, but without the structure forcing them into proximity. You're thinking too loud, Fletcher said one evening. They were in his room, tangled together in his massive bed, her head on his chest. What happens in December? His arms tightened around her. What do you want to happen? I want this, us. But I'm terrified it'll change when we're not living here anymore. Fletcher was quiet for a moment, then he shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look down at her. I've been thinking about that, about what comes next. And I love this house. My grandmother's memory is in every room, every corner of the garden, but it's also huge and formal, and it's not really us, is it? Helena's heart sank. You want to sell it? God, no, but I thought maybe we could make it ours. Change things, update some rooms, actually use all this space. And maybe, if you wanted, we could split our time. Keep an apartment in the city for when we're working, but come back here on weekends. make this home. Fletcher's expression turned vulnerable. I'm asking you to stay. Not because of the will, not because of any obligation. I'm asking you to build a life with me, Helena, here in the city, wherever you want, as long as we're together. Joy burst through her chest, bright and overwhelming. Yes, yes, I want that. He kissed her, deep and thorough, and Helena felt the last of her fear dissolve. This was real. They were real. December came too fast and too slow. The estate executor did a final inspection, declared the terms of the will satisfied, and officially transferred everything to Fletcher. He signed papers, made arrangements, and through it all, Helena watched him become lighter, freer. "It's done," he said, coming to find her in the greenhouse on a cold evening. "Everything's finalized. How does it feel?" "Like closing one chapter and starting another." He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I have something for you, Fletcher. You've already given me so much. Just trust me." He led her through the house to the library where he'd set up a projector. "Sit." She settled on the couch, confused. Then the screen lit up with a video of Eleanor sitting in the garden, smiling at the camera. "If you're watching this," Eleanor's recorded voice said, "then my plan worked. Helena, Fletcher, I hope you're together. I hope you found in each other what I saw the potential for all those months ago." Helena's hand flew to her mouth. Fletcher sat beside her, equally transfixed. "Fletcher, my darling boy, you were so lost, buried in work, afraid to let anyone close. I knew you needed someone who would see past the money and the name to the man underneath. Someone brilliant and kind and strong enough to stand up to you." Eleanor's eyes sparkled with mischief. "And Helena, sweet girl, you'd built such walls around yourself. You needed someone who would make you feel safe enough to take them down, who would cherish your heart the way it deserves." She leaned closer to the camera. "I won't lie and say I knew for certain you'd fall in love, but I hoped, and I gave you the greatest gift I could think of. Time. Time to know each other without the distractions of normal life. Time to build something real." Eleanor's expression turned serious. "Love is a choice, my dears. Every day you have to choose each other, choose kindness, choose to grow together instead of apart. It won't always be easy. But if you've found what I think you have, it'll be worth every challenge." The screen went dark. Helena was crying, and when she looked at Fletcher, his eyes were wet too. "She knew," Helena whispered. "She knew exactly what she was doing. She gave us everything." Fletcher's voice was rough. "And I can't even thank her." "Yes, you can, we can, by living the life she hoped we'd have. By choosing each other every single day." Fletcher pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I choose you, Helena, today, tomorrow, for the rest of my life. I choose you too." On Christmas Eve, Fletcher took Helena back to the garden where they'd spent so many hours together. Lights twinkled in the bare trees, and someone had cleared a path through the light snow. "What are we doing out here?" Helena asked, laughing. "It's freezing." "I needed the right setting." Fletcher stopped beside the rose garden, the bushes dormant but still beautiful in their winter sleep. "This is where I really saw you for the first time. You were pruning the heritage roses, talking to them like they could hear you. You had dirt on your nose and leaves in your hair, and you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." Helena's breath caught. "Fletcher." He dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I know we said we'd take things slow. I know there's still so much we're figuring out. But Helena, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You're my home, my future. The person I want to wake up next to for the rest of my life." He opened the box, revealing a ring with a perfect emerald surrounded by diamonds. "My grandmother's engagement ring. She left it for me to give to the woman I loved. Somehow, I think she always knew it would be you." Tears streamed down Helena's face. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." Fletcher slid the ring onto her finger, then stood and kissed her, deep and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Helena thought about Eleanor's video about choice and love and second chances. "When should we get married?" she asked. "Tomorrow, next week, whenever you want." "How about spring, when the roses bloom again?" "I think your grandmother would like that." Fletcher smiled, the genuine, unguarded smile she'd come to love. "Perfect." They married in May in the garden, surrounded by friends and family and flowers. Helena wore a simple dress and carried heritage roses. Fletcher couldn't stop staring at her like she was a miracle. Christopher, his cousin, stood as best man, apparently having sorted out his own relationship drama. Helena's colleagues from the botanical garden came, along with half the board of Kensington Industries. But none of it mattered except the moment Fletcher took her hands and promised forever. "I never believed in fate," he said during his vows. "But then you walked into my life, and suddenly everything made sense. You taught me how to slow down, how to appreciate beauty, how to love without fear. You're my partner, my best friend, my home, and I promise to choose you every single day for the rest of our lives." Helena was crying again, happy tears this time. "You taught me that walls aren't protection, they're just loneliness by another name. You made me brave enough to hope, to trust, to believe in forever. I choose you, Fletcher Kensington, today and always." The kiss they shared was witnessed by everyone they loved, but it felt like they were the only two people in the world. The reception spilled through the house and gardens, full of laughter and music and joy. Fletcher and Helena danced their first dance under the stars, swaying together like they had all the time in the world. "Happy," he murmured against her ear. "Incredibly. You. I've never been happier in my life." Later, as guests mingled and the party continued, Helena found herself in the rose garden, looking at the memorial they'd created for Eleanor. A beautiful stone bench surrounded by her favorite flowers with a plaque that read, "Eleanor Kensington, who believed in love and second chances." Fletcher found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind, thinking about her, wishing she could be here. "Wishing I could tell her thank you. I think she knows. I think wherever she is, she's incredibly smug about how well her plan worked." Helena laughed. "She'd definitely be insufferable about it." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the party through the windows of the house that had brought them together. "I talked to the board," Fletcher said. "They approved the Botanical Research Center. We break ground next month. You're serious about that, completely, Doctor?" "Helena Kensington is going to revolutionize plant conservation science. I'm just the guy who writes the checks." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I love you, so much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared, good scared. The kind that means I have something worth protecting, something real and precious and mine." Fletcher kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Ours. It's ours, Helena. Everything we build from here, we build together." A year later, they christened the new research center at the Botanical Garden, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to preserving endangered plant species. Helena gave a speech about the importance of conservation, about protecting beauty for future generations. Fletcher stood in the front row, pride shining in his eyes. Afterward, as they walked through the center, Helena showed him the conservation lab, the research offices, the seed bank that would preserve genetic material for centuries. "You did this," she said. "You made this happen. We did this. Your vision, my resources, that's what partnership looks like." Helena stopped, turning to face him. "I have news." Something in her tone made Fletcher go still. "What kind of news? The good kind? The terrifying, wonderful, life-changing kind?" She took his hand, placing it on her still flat stomach. "We're pregnant." Fletcher's eyes went wide. We're having a baby." "Yes. Are you happy?" Instead of answering, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing. When he set her down, his face was wet with tears. Happy doesn't even begin to cover it. Helena, we're having a baby. I know. It's early still and anything could happen, but I wanted you to know. I wanted us to go through this together from the very beginning. Fletcher cupped her face in his hands. Every step, every moment, I'm here. We're doing this together. Their daughter was born in January, during a snowstorm that blanketed Willowbrook Manor in white. Fletcher held Helena's hand through 14 hours of labor, coaching her through contractions, never leaving her side. When the doctor finally placed their daughter in Helena's arms, they both wept. She's perfect, Helena whispered. She looks like you, thank God. What should we name her? Fletcher looked down at the tiny, perfect face of his daughter. Eleanor, if that's okay with you. Helena's throat tightened. It's perfect. Hi, Eleanor. Hi, sweet girl. Little Helena Kensington proved to be as stubborn and brilliant as her namesake. She grew into a toddler who would rather be in the garden than anywhere else, who could name 20 different species of roses by the time she was 3, who wrapped her father around her tiny finger with a single smile. Fletcher, who had once worked 80-hour weeks and measured his worth in profit margins, became the kind of father who left meetings early for dance recitals, who built fairy houses in the garden, who read bedtime stories with different voices for every character. You're a natural at this, Helena told him one evening. They were sitting on the terrace, watching Eleanor chase fireflies in the garden, her laughter bright in the twilight. I had no idea life could be like this, Fletcher said. So full, so good. No regrets about the corporate empire. I still run the company, but I don't let it run me, that's the difference. He pulled Helena close. My grandmother knew. She knew I needed to learn how to live before I could really appreciate all of it. 2 years later, they had a son. Then 3 years after that, another daughter. Willowbrook Manor filled with noise and chaos and love, transformed from a showpiece into a real home. They updated the kitchen, converted one of the formal parlors into a playroom, built a treehouse in the oak tree overlooking the rose garden. Helena's research flourished. She published papers, gave lectures, became a leading voice in botanical conservation. But her favorite work was still in Eleanor's garden, teaching her children about growth and patience and the quiet miracles of green things. Fletcher stepped back from day-to-day operations at Kensington Industries, focusing instead on sustainable development projects that made a real difference. He and Helena established the Helena Kensington Foundation, funding environmental conservation and educational programs. On their 10th anniversary, they recreated their wedding in the rose garden, renewing their vows in front of their children and friends. Fletcher's hair had touches of silver at the temples now, and Helena had laugh lines around her eyes, but they looked at each other the same way they had that first year, with wonder and gratitude and bone-deep love. 10 years, Helena said as they danced. Can you believe it? Sometimes it feels like forever. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, but every day I'm grateful. For what? For a stubborn old woman who decided to play matchmaker from beyond the grave. For the year that forced us together. For every choice we've made since then. Helena rested her head on his shoulder. I think about her sometimes, what she'd say if she could see us now. I told you so, Fletcher said, and Helena laughed because it was true. Eleanor would be insufferably smug and absolutely delighted. Their eldest daughter, Eleanor, grew into a teenager with her grandmother's sharp wit and her mother's love of plants. She spent hours in the greenhouse, developing new cultivation techniques, already talking about studying botanical sciences in college. Their son inherited Fletcher's head for business and Helena's creativity, forever drawing up plans for sustainable buildings and eco-friendly developments. And their youngest was pure chaos, fearless and joyful, keeping them all on their toes. "We made good humans," Helena said one evening, watching their children play in the garden. "We did, and we're still making a good life together, choosing each other every day." Fletcher kissed her temple. "Every single day, forever." As the sun set over Willowbrook Manor, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Helena thought about the unlikely journey that had brought them here. A will that forced them together. A year that changed everything. A love that grew like the plants in Eleanor's garden, carefully tended and fiercely protected. She thought about the woman she'd been when she first arrived, lost and lonely and afraid to hope. And the woman she'd become, surrounded by family and purpose, and a love that felt like coming home. Fletcher's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing automatically, a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything. Nothing. How lucky we are." "Luck had nothing to do with it. My grandmother had a plan, and we executed it perfectly." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their children, watching their life unfold in front of them. The house behind them was lit up and warm, full of memories and laughter, and the evidence of years spent building something real. This was what Eleanor had hoped for when she wrote that will, Helena realized. Not just bringing them together, but giving them the foundation to build a life that mattered. To choose love over fear, connection over isolation, growth over stagnation. "Thank you," Helena whispered, not sure if she was talking to Fletcher or Eleanor's memory or the universe that had brought them together. "For what?" Fletcher asked. "For everything. For choosing me. For building this life with me. For being exactly who you are." Fletcher turned her to face him, his gray eyes soft in the fading light. "I'd choose you in every lifetime, Helena, in every possible version of reality. You're it for me. You always have been." She kissed him, soft and sweet, a promise renewed for the 1,000th time. When they broke apart, their youngest daughter was calling for them, and the moment dissolved into laughter and chaos and the beautiful mess of family life. But as they walked back toward the house, Helena knew the truth that Eleanor had understood all along. Love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about choosing each other, day after day, in 1,000 small ways. It was about building something together, nurturing it like a garden, cutting away what didn't serve and protecting what mattered most. It was about a stubborn old woman who loved her grandson enough to gamble on an impossible matchmaking scheme. It was about a year that was supposed to be an obligation, but became the foundation of forever. It was about two people who found each other against all odds and built a life that was everything neither of them knew they needed. As Helena tucked Eleanor into bed that night, her daughter asked, "Mama, tell me about great-grandmother Eleanor again." Helena smoothed back her daughter's dark hair. She was brilliant and kind and a little bit mischievous. She loved roses and believed in happy endings. "Did she know about me?" "In a way, yes. I think she knew about all of this. She had a way of seeing the future in the present, of understanding what people needed even when they didn't know themselves. I wish I could have met her." "Me too, sweetheart. But you carry her name and her spirit and her belief that love can change everything. That's almost as good." Fletcher appeared in the doorway, and Helena's heart still skipped a beat at the sight of him after all these years. He joined them, kissing their daughter's forehead. "Good night, little Eleanor. Dream of gardens and roses, and fairy houses, and fairy houses." Later in their own room, Fletcher pulled Helena close. "Today was good. Today was perfect. Tomorrow will be better." "How do you know?" He kissed her, slow and deep. "Because every day with you is better than the last. That's just how this works." Helena laughed against his mouth. "You're such a romantic. Only with you. Only ever with you." They fell asleep tangled together, the way they had for 10 years, the way they would for the rest of their lives. And if Eleanor's spirit watched over them from wherever she'd gone, Helena liked to think she was smiling, satisfied that her final gift had been everything she'd hoped it would be. Outside, the garden slept beneath the stars, patient and eternal, waiting for spring to come and the cycle to begin again. Growth and change, loss and renewal, the endless dance of life continuing in the house that love built, on the foundation an old woman's wisdom had provided. And in the morning they would wake up and choose each other again, the way they always did, the way they always would. Forever, built one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of love at a time. That was Eleanor's true gift, not just bringing them together, but teaching them that forever was possible if you were brave enough to believe in it, patient enough to nurture it, and wise enough to choose it every single day. And they did. They chose it. They chose each other. They chose the life they'd built together in the house where it all began, surrounded by roses and children and laughter and love. They chose forever. And forever, it turned out, was exactly as beautiful as an old woman's matchmaking heart had always believed it could be.